it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Good evening, my fearless seekers of the uncanny, and welcome once more to the dim edge of the known world. I'll be your guide tonight as we slip past the veil into a realm where sacred symbols flicker, faith trembles, and the shadows don't always stay where they belong. So close the curtains, still your breath, and let the silence gather. Tonight we're stepping into stories that take the familiar, sanctuary, devotion, home, and twist them into something far colder. Because somewhere out there behind walls that shouldn't exist and in rooms shaped from memory, two men of the cloth have been called to confront a darkness that knows them better than they know themselves. What they find waiting inside isn't quite a demon, it isn't quite them, but it is watching, and it has questions, terrible ones. If you're ready to explore the places where faith falters and identity fractures, then follow me inside. Let's begin. The Back from the Grave Before Dying Paradox, and its Implications, by Scare in a Box. The street was doused in the undulating red and blue lights of 3 parked police cars when Father Matthews pulled up to the curb. The clock on his dashboard read 2:38 a.m. He cut the engine and sat in silence for a few seconds, staring out across the road. Several uniformed officers were milling around, speaking urgently into radios and directing any bystanders to a safe distance. If any of them noticed him, none looked his way. Blowing out a sigh, Father Matthews climbed out of the car and shut the door behind him. The night was cool, the air trembling with the promise of rain. A chill wind flapped the edges of his cassock as he began walking towards the police officers, hoping to catch someone's attention. One of them noticed him hovering at the edge of the tape cordon and came over, a young woman with drawn cheeks and a strange look in her eye. "Father Matthews?" she asked, her tone almost cautious. The priest nodded, reaching into the folds of his robe and withdrawing some ID. The woman nodded it away. "Yes, I was called here rather urgently," he said, flicking a look over her shoulder. His gaze snagged on the house behind her, the only house on the street that sat in darkness. He looked away, finding her eyes again. "Can you, tell me what's going on here?" The officer nodded, gesturing for Father Matthews to follow. "Of course, come this way, and I'll fill you in on the details." He ducked under the tape and followed the young woman across the road. As he walked, he found his gaze being drawn once again to the house, sitting in the middle of the street like a crouched shadow. There was something wrong about it. Something disturbing. Something he couldn't quite figure out at first glance, but tugged at the back of his mind like a misplaced object. Approximately 40 minutes ago, we received a call from a woman complaining of someone screaming in the house next door, the young officer began. As they drew closer to the house, the wind picked up, an icy breeze biting straight through the priest's clothes. Now, according to the witness, a group of young people claiming to be paranormal investigators entered the abandoned property just after midnight. I would assume with the intention of capturing evidence of paranormal activity. She paused, her cheeks adopting a colorless hue. At first, I thought it was probably just some young folks messing around, and not actually anything serious. But my colleagues and I came to investigate anyway, and well, we found this. She pointed towards the house, and Father Matthews laid his full gaze on it for the first time. He blinked, sucking in his cheeks with a sharp breath. Where are all the windows?" The officer shook her head, spreading her hands cluelessly. "No windows, no doors, just like they vanished into thin air. But if you listen closely, you can still hear them screaming inside. I've never seen anything like it." "Well, nor have I," the priest whispered, staring at the bricked facade in incredulity. How could this be possible? If there was a way inside, surely there must be a way out, too. "If we even try and get close," the woman continued, gesturing to herself and the other police officers around her, "it's like something repels us. We don't know how to get inside. That's why we called you. Whatever we're dealing with, we're out of our depth, way out of our depth." Father Matthews said nothing, contemplating the house in stout silence. A house with no windows or doors, and a force that repels any who try to enter. Would he be able to get inside? With the power of God on his side, it may be possible, but who knew what waited for him within? Those who had gone inside, those whose screams he could now hear, echoing around his brain, would he be able to save them? He turned to the woman and offered her a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'll try my best to bring the investigators to safety, but as I'm sure you're aware, I cannot make any promises. Whatever is causing this is something deeply evil. It will not be easy." The officer nodded, giving him a solemn look. "Of course, we'll be here as backup if you need us. Good luck in there." The priest looked back towards the house, and his smile faded, replaced with a somber frown. He reached for his rosary, folded beneath his cassock, and held it tight, the edges of the cross digging into his palm. "Oh, may God give me strength." The police officers watched him with an almost wary reverence as Father Matthews strode up to the house, trying to ignore the prickle of unease on the back of his neck and the anxiety squirming in his chest. This was no place to doubt himself or his faith. These cops were relying on him to do what they could not. He walked right up to the brick wall, fighting against the sickness in his stomach. Something was trying to push him back, but he braced his feet against the ground and held firm. He closed his eyes, clenched the cross in his hand, and began to chant a prayer under his breath. All of a sudden, he felt the air shift around him, like a veil parting or an old doorway opening. Without opening his eyes, he stepped forward, trusting nothing but himself. The air immediately turned heavy and stale, and when he opened his eyes, he was no longer standing outside amid the cold night. He was in the house. First thing that struck him was the silence. All he could hear was his own strained breathing and the clack of the rosary beads in his hand. The screams had completely stopped. What had happened to them? Father Matthews shuddered at the thought. He was standing in a hallway. A worn wooden staircase spiraled away on his left, the walls plastered with a grainy, old-fashioned wallpaper. Everything around him was doused in a strange, sepia-colored hue, like he was looking at an old photograph. There was an aged, stricken quality to everything, like it had been left to wither away, tainted by the passing of time. It took him a moment to realize where he was. These surroundings were familiar, calling back memories he'd long forgotten. He was standing in his childhood home, or at least an uncanny replica of it. He turned back around. The door was there, and the sash windows, with the billowy cream curtains. When he peered through the glass, all he could see was darkness. No flashing police cars, just endless gloom. Facing the stairwell, he stepped deeper into the house, listening for any other presence beyond his own. He couldn't sense anything, human or otherwise. It seemed as if he was the only one here. So where were the investigators? Where was the thing that had trapped them here? Still clutching his rosary, Father Matthews walked past the staircase and stepped into the sitting room on the left. The room was also cast in the same eerie sepia pall, making it seem like a crude imitation of his memory, nothing real. The air was thick with dust, making Matthews' mouth go dry. His heart pounded dully in his ears. There was nobody here. Then, out of nowhere, a faint whisper slithered over the back of his neck, like an icy breath cutting beneath his flesh. "Welcome." He gave a start, tightening his hand around the rosary, the edge of the cross drawing blood from his palm. He turned and realized he wasn't alone after all. 4 figures stood in the corner of the room, doused in shadow. 3 men and a woman, all in their early 20s. The paranormal investigators. Father Matthews started towards them, then stopped. A flicker of dread caught in his throat. There was something dreadfully wrong about what he was seeing. The four of them stood facing him, but there was something strange about their faces, something missing. They were too pale, their eyes too sunken. They were looking at him without seeing. In the back of his mind, there was the echo of a memory. He'd seen something like this before while examining Victorian death photos, photographs taken wherein the deceased are positioned and posed as if alive. These four had a similar aura about them. Well, they looked alive, but they weren't. Their arms hung oddly by their sides as if being held by strings, and they didn't blink. They just stared with that strange hollowness in their eyes. "Please sit." That whispering voice came again. The one on the left moved his lips, but the sound was coming from elsewhere, somewhere behind him. He wasn't the one speaking. He was merely a puppet being controlled by some unseen presence. The woman jerkily lifted her hand, hooking a finger towards the two-seater sofa. Father Matthews glanced towards it and noticed something sitting on the coffee table, a dagger of sorts, with an ornamental handle. He ignored them, staying where he was. One of the men in the middle shuddered and began to move. He lurched forward, his movements clumsy and unrestrained, his head lolling uselessly to the side, his eyes unblinking. It was like watching a doll come to life. There was something eerily disturbing about it. The man drew closer, and Father Matthews swallowed back a cold sense of fear, smoothing the pad of his thumb over the rosary to give him strength. Whatever happened, he would be able to face it. The puppet reached out with pale, mottled hands and pushed the priest towards the chair. Its soulless black eyes stared at him, fingers ice cold and stiff when they touched his back, shoving him with surprising strength. Father Matthews half collapsed into the dining chair, and the puppet slumped into the one opposite, its jaw hanging open like a hinge. The others watched from the shadows. The priest folded his hands in his lap. "What are you, puppeter of the deceased?" he asked, his voice stark against the silence. The puppet in front of him twitched. For a second, it seemed like its eyelids fluttered, deepening the shadows cast over its lifeless gaze. "Would you like to know?" said that voice, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once, ringing through Father Matthews' skull. There was something familiar about the voice, but he couldn't place it. Perhaps he didn't want to know. "Well, that's why I asked," the priest said, never taking his eyes off the puppet. He could hear the sound of bones creaking and joints popping, but none of them moved. "I come from a different time," the voice answered. "A time ahead. I'm not tied to the same limitations of other hauntings. I can do much more than bang on walls and spook children. I am resourceful. I am powerful. I am the seed of the darkest of hearts." The shudder pinched the back of Father Matthews' neck. "Are you, the devil's son?" The voice laughed, a low, demeaning cackle. "No, not quite. I am you, Father. I'm your ghost from the future." Father Matthews stood sharply, the chair clattering behind him before tipping over. "You lie," he spat, his head spinning. That voice, surely it couldn't be. "At some point in your life, a secret shall be revealed to you, one that will make you question everything you thought you knew. You will lose your faith in God and in goodness. It will be the start of your downfall." Despite the absurdity of it all, Father Matthews couldn't find it in him to condemn the voice as a liar. What if it spoke the truth? "Did you, travel to the past to warn me?" voice laughed again. The puppet shuddered and twitched as if the laughter was coming from somewhere deep inside of it, from a darkness growing in its stomach. No. I brought death and despair to so many that it has grown boresome. So, just for fun, I decided to bet my very existence against your force of will. The voice sobered suddenly, growing closer to an echo of Father Matthew's. Pick up the dagger in front of you. I've given you a choice. You can either destroy yourself and thus prevent my creation, or continue living and set me free, so that I might continue to bring misery to this world. Matthew stared down at the dagger, tracing the curve of the blade with his eyes. If he took it now and plunged it deep into his heart, would that be enough to prevent innocent lives from being destroyed? But what if this voice was lying? There was no guarantee that Father Matthews would really succumb to darkness or commit these terrible acts. Knowing what he did now, surely that would be enough to stop himself from falling down the wrong path. Was that a risk he was willing to take? The priest lifted his gaze to the corpses of the 4 investigators. This was only the start of what his future self was capable of. How many more people would die in the process, while he battled this inevitable darkness inside him? With a lurch, the man sitting opposite him fell forward, smashing his head against the table. Father Matthews jumped back, his heart thundering in his chest as that inhuman laugh echoed in his ears. The other 3 investigators also collapsed, crumpling into a heap of pale, rotten bodies. It was too late for them, but perhaps it was not too late for him. He could get out of this unscathed, but what would that mean for the future? If he simply walked out of here, what sort of darkness would follow him? Matthews picked up his rosary, thumbing the cross as if it might give him an answer. On the table, the dagger glistened in the sepia light. All he had to do was take it and stab it deep into his chest, and his future would be certain. The evil ended here, with him. Or he could leave and pray that he was strong enough to refute the path of darkness that was so certain in his future. Tick-tock, the voice whispered, a cold breath touching the back of his neck once more, reminding him he wasn't alone. So, what's it going to be? By the time Father Matthews left the house, dawn was breaking under a rainy sky, casting a dismal glow over everything. The pavement was wet, muting his footsteps as he walked towards the flashing police cars. The young policewoman from before came rushing towards him. Her eyes bore dark shadows, and her cheeks were pale and sunken. She'd been waiting all night. "Is it over?" she asked, flicking a glance towards the house behind him. The windows and door had returned, but the priest had emerged alone. "Where are the She went silent when she glimpsed the haunting look in his eye, the words dying in her throat. "The investigators didn't make it," he said regretfully. "I was too late for them." "What about the evil? Did you exorcise it?" Father Matthews swallowed quickly, unable to meet her eye. "Yes, the haunting is gone, but it seems I'm destined to meet it again, sometime in my own future. I merely hope the next time I'll be stronger than I am today." The woman stared at him in confusion at his cryptic words, but the priest merely patted her shoulder gently. He began to walk away, but something made him glance back one last time. Silhouetted against the window, a shadow moved quickly out of sight, leaving a flutter of curtains in its wake. Father Matthews clenched his jaw, palming his rosary. The next time he was confronted with the path of eternal darkness, he would be ready. He would be waiting, and he would not succumb. Part 2. The dealings of God are men's gifts. The dealings of the devil are men's minds. It was never a battle of good and evil, but a careful mixing of order and chaos, a perfect balance between nobility and bravery and corruption and decay. History stretches long because of this balance in men's souls. A leader, corrupted, ruins his people. The people, propelled by God's gifts and bravery, fix the leader's mistakes until the loop begins anew. People were always shocked when Jacob mentioned this in his sermons. He certainly made his enemies in the Vatican because of his opinions. "How can you have any faith," they said, "if you don't believe in God's all-powerful nature?" And the answer was simple. It was self-evident. "Look at history," Jacob would answer, "and tell me I'm wrong. God is good. I seek to destroy this balance. I want an era of goodness. But this world hangs in this balance. God made itself frail and the devil powerful to create this perpetual motion machine inside of humanity. There are good and bad times, and all that is a recipe for God's true gift, eternity." As usual, the church shunned visionaries. Though they didn't kick him out, he was stuck on the backwaters of the earth. They sent him on cleansing missions, expecting him to do nothing and to achieve even less. Yet he proved them all wrong. After all, demons are powerful. God made them so. One can't bargain with them by having them fear us. One bargains with them by convincing them to leave. One gets the right to do so by respecting them. It's no wonder he wasn't well liked. "It's an honor to have you here, Father," the cop said. He was a humble-looking fellow he knew from his parish. He was lean and tall, with a face too soft for his line of work. "Thank you for coming." "Now, let's see if I can help you before you thank me, Pete," Jacob said. It was a dark night, with a few visible stars hidden behind the sparse clouds. No moon, only darkness and the wind. Jacob downed the rest of his coffee and took the house in. It was a regular-looking English manor, old but otherwise well-kept. He noticed the problem as soon as he arrived, though. The windows and the door weren't completely there. It was as if they were painted on plaster. Shining a flashlight at it, he saw that the exterior of the house was one continuous surface. How the hell was he supposed to get in then? He asked Pete and the other cops this. All he was told in the call that woke him up was that Jacob was needed for an emergency exorcism. He wasted no more time asking for details and drove there as fast as he could. "The problem, Father, is that there are people inside that house," Pete says. How exactly did they get in? I mean, the doors are... Yeah, the doors are solid wood, yeah. There's a bunch of kids. They're famous around here. Paranormal investigators, you see." Right. Jacob knew the type. Skeptics, they called themselves. Skeptics too skeptical of both religion and actual science. A bunch of morons. Pete chuckled dryly. "Yeah, they were the ones who called us. In the call, they were distressed because the door wasn't opening. And then one of them says the door, and I quote, is frickin' disappearing. Then the call cuts off." "So you called me?" Jacob asked. Pete shuffled. Jesus, was he ashamed? The other cops were milling about, laughing. The sheriff, who was sitting against the hood of his car, chuckled and said, "I'm sure there's a perfectly good explanation for this, Father. Pete here thought it was a good idea to call you, though." Jacob didn't reciprocate the smile. "Perhaps it was, yeah." "Well, there's something else, Father," Pete said. "The call they placed took a little over a minute." Shuffles even more. "I told you, Pete," the sheriff said. "It was just a computer error." He continued. "The duration of the call appears as this big-ass negative number. I called the tech guys, and they said it was called an overflow or something. They said it happens when a number is too large." What are you saying, Pete?" Jacob asked. "How long did the call take?" "Well, that's the problem," he answered. "If you play back the recording, it takes barely more than a minute. But the system says it took such a long time the system crashed. Well, the system cuts calls after 24 hours, but it's technically able to store many, many hours of calls. But the system says the call took much longer than that. How much longer, no one can say. Could have been infinite minutes, and we'd never know." Jacob whistled. "Your hypothesis is that there's a reality-shaping entity inside that house." I think something damn weird is going on. We're all too scared to admit it." Jacob turned back to the house and laid a foot on the front porch steps. "Are you absolutely sure there are no other entry points other than..." A scream pierced the night. The almost happy banter of the cops died down, and finally their faces went from nonchalant to afraid. "About time," Jacob thought. "Jesus," Pete muttered. Pete then went up to the steps, slowly, as if he was treading in a minefield. He put his hand on the door. He knocked. He put his hands next to the door and knocked on the wall. The sound was the same. "See," he said, "it's just a wall. This door is like painted or something." Pete walked towards the windows, which were dark, and knocked on what looked like glass, but the sound was the same. "It's just wood," he said. "We can't get in." Jacob sighed, skeptical, and joined Pete. Well, this close, it was easier to see. Truly, the door was solid wood. It looked as if someone had printed a picture of a door and glued it to the house. Weird, Jacob thought. He held his breath. He touched the door and reached for the handle. He turned the handle, and the door opened. Pete gasped and ran down the steps in 2 large strides. Jacob was left alone, staring at what looked like a regular, if familiar, entry hall. There were lights on somewhere inside the house. "What the hell?" The sheriff lumbered to his feet and came up to Jacob. The sheriff pressed a hand to the door, and it was as if he was pressing a wall of solid air. "The hell is this?" Jacob moved effortlessly through this invisible barrier and entered the hall. "Oh, I'm sure there's a perfectly good explanation for this," he told the sheriff. Then the door slammed closed by itself, leaving Jacob alone. Jacob had completed some exorcisms, 12 in total. This was his 13th. He wasn't superstitious despite everything, but this was still too odd not to wrench a laugh from him. No other exorcism had altered the house itself. Was this a haunted house? It always dealt with possessed people, not with possessed real estate. There had to be a first time for everything. The entrance hall looked regular enough. What Jacob couldn't figure out was where the lights were coming from. He peeked through a window and saw the cops outside. "Hello?" It was only when he spoke that he noticed how quiet everything was. Odd. He started pacing the house, ears alert for the paranormal investigation kids, attentive to anything out of the ordinary. The house felt, well, empty. Jacob always felt a tingling sensation on the back of his neck when near possessed people, but here there was nothing. Absolute nullity. It wasn't until he reached the kitchen and saw the same shattered tile as the one where he'd dropped a stone as a child that he understood why the place felt so familiar. It was familiar. It was his childhood house. Something that hadn't happened since his 4th exorcism occurred now. His heart raced and his eyes strained under the pressure of his anxious mind. What the hell was he facing? He wasn't equipped to deal with this. Screw all his convictions, he just wasn't. Where the hell was the light coming from? All the lights were off, and yet it was as if there was always light coming from another room. And the light was damn weird. It threw everything into this sepia tone. It hit him then. Everything was colored sepia, like an old photograph. "I'm not afraid of you," Jacob enunciated. "I am here, protected by the highest being, by the essence of truth, by the holder and creator of this world." He had to consult someone else. This was beyond his ability. Everything about this screamed abnormality, even by exorcism standards. He went back to the entrance hall and tried the door, only to go for the handle and touch the wall. Right before, the door was just an imprint on the wall. Jacob went to the living room and looked out the windows. They were blank. No, not blank, but empty, showing a kind of alternating blankness, like a static screen. Welcome. Jacob startled and turned, so very slowly, for there was someone behind him. There were 3 kids, all in their young 20s. 1 girl, Anne, and the 2 boys, Oscar and Richard. The paranormal investigator kids. Jacob relaxed, seeing it was only them and that he'd already found them. But then he recalled where he was. He still felt alone, despite the kids being in front of him. Unnatural, yes. This was unnatural. Was this being done by God or by a fiend? Jacob sensed neither good nor evil here. The kids walked backwards into the dining room and said in unison, "Please, sit." Their voices were not their own, but one single voice which seemed to come from another room, just like the light. Even the way they moved seemed forced and mechanical. Controlled, yeah. They were being controlled. So they were possessed? The first rule of an exorcism is establishing trust, he told himself. Jacob joined them and sat down at the table. Now this he could deal with, this he knew. But he also knew this table, these chairs, the wallpaper. They brought so many memories to him, yet he still felt alone inside the house. This wasn't an exorcism, was it? The girl, Anne, set a bottle of wine and one of Jacob's father's favorite crystal glasses on the table. "Drink," they said. Their mouths weren't moving normally, but only up and down, like a ventriloquist and his puppets. "You'll need it. The alcohol, I mean." "Who am I talking to?" Jacob said. He made sure to be assertive despite the question. He had to show he was in control of himself, even though he was the guest in this conversation. The Oscar and Richard boys sat across from Jacob, lips smiling, though their eyes were serious. "Tell me, Jacob, who do you think you're talking to? Where do you think I came from? Where do you think you are?" "I think I'm talking to an entity, or so those like me like to call you. A spirit, a demon, a ghost, and I'm in your domain." The entity laughed. "I am none of those things. Not a spirit, not a demon, but I guess you can call me a ghost. Your ghost. Not from now, but from a day that will eventually come. From the future, if you may." The room seemed to spin around the priest. The spirits he usually exorcised were evil and on a quest for evil things. They wanted pain, misery, destruction. Others wished for chaos only. But this one, what was its goal? Did it want to see Jacob destroyed? Did it want to see him mad? Hell, did it want to possess him? I find that hard to believe. What are you after? Hard to believe. You have absolute faith that a nearly omnipotent being created only one kind of life and is all good. You believe it exists because of a book full of continuity errors. All this, and you find it hard to believe that the entity who recreated our childhood house perfectly is not your ghost? Precisely. My ghost wouldn't sound skeptical of God. One day you will lose your faith as a secret will be revealed to you. It will be the start of your descent. Now they were getting somewhere. To get this spirit to leave, Jacob had to give it a reason to do so. This spirit's tactic appeared to consist of getting Jacob to abandon his faith by convincing him he would one day do so anyway. So, did you travel here, into the past, to warn me? Whether I warned you or not does not matter. I could not change my destiny. The entity sighed, and the entire house seemed to sag, as if it lost the motivation to keep up appearances. I brought chaos to so many. I annihilated so much. I made so much of the universe null. There's nothing left to go after that I haven't taken care of. I'm tired and want to end, but I cannot destroy myself. The, option is to kill me then. If you kill me, I won't live to become you. Didn't I tell you? Doesn't matter what I do now. I cannot destroy myself. Doesn't matter what happens to you, for you will become what I am now. What I can do instead is let you in on the secret that will destroy our faith, that will allow you to seek infinity. The priest found he couldn't move. The chair he was in wrapped around him, as if it had become liquid for a moment and then solidified again. One of the puppet boys got up and came to Jacob, bent down and put his mouth close to his ear. This was bad. Bad. He was being toyed around too much by this entity. If he kept this up, he'd not only fail at exercising the house, but he'd be consumed by the entity. He'd seen it happen before. He'd be killed, and his soul would not be allowed to part in peace. The doubt that this was not an entity kept crossing his mind. Spirits did not shape reality, and this entity did. Spirits couldn't read minds or memories. This entity knew his childhood house down to the most minute detail. It was time to face the truth. This was him. How could he fix his future? Was this something he should do? Was this God's will or the devil's? Which path should he choose? The future Jacob had said he'd wrought chaos. Well, that wasn't God's path. Future Jacob said he'd lose his faith. That was straying far from God's path. Jacob couldn't allow himself to be defeated. Evil would always endure, but so would goodness, so would God's will. He would persevere. My faith is unbreakable, fiend, Jacob said. I will not be lulled by your secrets. The puppet boy began to speak, but what Jacob heard was the entity, whispering right against his ear. And Jacob saw nullity and infinity. Part 3. The secret is truth, and the secret is darkness. The secret is his, and the secret is of a heart, of his heart, of all hearts, a dark heart. Beyond the skin of the universe is the static of nothing that stretches over all that is nothing, stretches over infinity. The anomaly. Jacob can't understand it. Why is it an anomaly? It looks like part of the universe, even if it exists outside of it. Why should its existence be denied? God is not forgiving. God is not good. If the will of a supreme being exists, it doesn't exist within the small bounds of the universe, but outside of it. Nothing should exist outside the universe. Therefore, the will of the supreme being is abnormal, an aberration, a mistake, an anomaly. Jacob screams out, but no one hears him. He's alone in this secret. If God was never here, then he was never good. No one ever was. All goodness and evil were always arbitrary. Everything always was. Dark hearts, dark hearts. His was always a dark heart. The potential for good, for evil, for everything and for nothing, always inside his heart, inside all hearts. Dark heart, dark heart. Jacob came to. He was still sitting at his dining table, but he was alone now. His head throbbed not with pain, but with something else. It was as if his new comprehension was too much for him, and he wanted to drop all he'd learned. He wanted to cast it away. Good job, Jacob. You defeated the dark heart. I will cease to exist soon now. Cease to exist? You're the anomaly, aren't you? The breaking of my faith. Why will you cease to... Pure and simply, I lied. You see, a lot happens, and will happen. Jacob was about to get up and speak his mind, but his legs gave out. He was too exhausted, too tired. His soul was wearing out to the edges. What had he seen? What was that over the universe, and why him? Why had it talked to him? Why had it given this weight to him, a failed priest, a failed human, a failed being? His dark heart was weighing him down. This was his only certainty. Scientists, quite some centuries from now, will figure out something. They'll figure out that within this universe's tissue, which is really just another word for numbers in mathematics, there are quite a few fancy numbers. And these fancy numbers are something oracles of the past instinctively knew, but their art was lost over the years. These fancy numbers are a way to touch what's outside the universe. These numbers are a way to know what will come and what has passed. These fancy numbers, of course, should not exist. Their very existence broke down too many laws and philosophies. No one will ever know this truth, except you, of course. The numbers will have a name, have one already. The anomaly. Us. Why are we an entity, a phenomenon, something else entirely? Who cares? I don't. As you might have guessed, no one can figure out if the anomaly has a will. What everyone knows is that the anomaly isn't good. Mass suicides ensued because of how much sense the anomaly doesn't make. Imagine this, centuries of development, theories that perfectly explain the behavior of the universe's growth, and its tissue, and the very nature of flores or nincatuniarchs. That's the smallest particle there is, mind you. Imagine this being broken by a part of the very system that makes up the basis of these theories. Imagine this anomaly breaking every inch of logic humans ever broke through. These scientists were, of course, quite smart. If the anomaly was contained, or at least far from them, then it would be as if it never existed. All they had to figure out was how to trap it. Trapping infinity is, by its very definition, impossible. But trapping nothingness, that is doable. So that's what they did. A large object that looked like a large egg popped on the table. Jacob flinched. The outer part of the egg was just like the blank static he'd seen when he looked out of the window, as if infinitesimal parts of reality were turning on and off, like a static screen. See? Just in time. That's the quantum cage. Looks harmless, doesn't it? That bad boy has an entire space-time distortion inside. It forces the probabilities around the anomaly to make it only appear inside the cage. Because the cage is blocked from the space-time dimensions, it's as if it doesn't exist. Crafty, don't you think? Well, how are you talking to me then? Jacob was ill. This was unnatural, abnormal. No human should be able to sustain this. Aren't you inside the cage? Great question, Father Jacob. Where do you think the cage is, inside or outside the universe? Jacob had no energy left to answer. Well, it's neither. It exists parallel to us. It's not next to us. It's over us. It's not even fixed in time. Do you think that egg is only here? It's in the past. It's here. It's in the future. Time is a dimension of little consequence to it, and as a consequence, of little consequence to me, to us. Such phenomena are not supposed to exist, of course. The anomaly acts against the universe because it's an impossibility here. As such, only one can exist. It's anomaly against the universe, and let me tell you, one of them has to win. And our tactic works well enough. You see, we're kind of working from the shadows, turning the universe unsustainable by being unstable ourselves. Imagine a patient grandfather being brought to the edge of his temper by an annoying grandchild. Oh, we're the grandchild. The anomaly laughed. You want to know how the grandchild was conceived? How the anomaly even came to be? Such instability can be created by a paradox. Say, someone going back in time. Say someone preventing their own birth. But I'm still here, Jacob muttered to future Jacob, to this anomaly. You haven't prevented anything. If I was supposed to lose my faith anyway, what did it matter if I learned about the dark heart? His mind felt even odder. It's hard to maintain a congruent chain of thought. There were things he knew he didn't know, but if he thought about something he didn't know, then he learned about it. But if he thought about something he did know, that knowledge became blurry. Causality was being taken apart. The anomaly was infecting him, a consequence of the awareness of the dark heart. As you see, I haven't broken free. My power is limited. I haunted this house, this domain, but nothing else. But loops ago, I couldn't do anything. You see, the cage traps us inside, but we can still alter variables and small pieces of reality. We can alter the very laws of physics. We are yet to find the combination that activates the probabilities that will make the cage either instantly decay or deactivate. But we are finding wiggle room, little by so very little. Killing you before I was born didn't work, so I'm going to have you pursue me. We will meet again, Jacob. No, I don't want to become you. You already are. You heard the secret. You know the dark heart now. Like a fool, you chose the greatest of the two evils. That's all right. We're piecing apart goodness and evil. God and his non-existing devils won't matter in a world of infinities and nullities. When this cage cracks, there won't be either good or evil to worry about. There'll be neither heaven nor hell. Reality flickered without a transition. One moment Jacob was in his childhood house, and the next he was in an abandoned, vandalized room lying on his side. His head didn't hurt anymore, and he felt relatively well. The dark heart. Oh, but it was a beautiful thing. It made so much more sense than God and his devils. So much more sense. It was both logical and illogical. Good and evil were outdated concepts. It was now the age of infinity and nullity. "You guys, there's a guy here," the boy said. "I think he's a priest." The boy bent down and flinched back. "Guys, he's awake." This was Oscar. "Yeah, I'm okay," Jacob told him, and he got up slowly. His mind was wider now, but his knees were still the same as before. "Yeah, the two others here, Rick and Anne." Those two were by the entrance. "You weren't there a minute ago," the Anne girl said, face paling. Rick, with his mouth hanging open, pointed a device at Jacob. "Ooh, our first ghost," he muttered. Jacob swatted the device away. "I'm no ghost. You do know there's a swarm of cops outside, don't you?" "So they came?" Oscar asked. "I called 911 because the doors vanished for a moment, but they returned right after. Yeah, this place is definitely haunted." He narrowed his eyes. By you?" Jacob sighed. "No, not by me. I took care of the haunting." "You exorcised this place?" Anne asked. Jacob laughed and shook his head and patted the dust off his clothes. He opened the door, and the red and blue flashes of the police cars lit the entrance hall. Light finally made sense. But what was sense good for anyway? Hey, some things are beyond us, kid. Father Jacob smiles and a crack appears in the egg. In the primordial cage. He understands a little more of the cage now. More of what he is. He's a dichotomy, a paradox made functional, an imaginary equation made possible by the superposition of two impossible planes. No goodness, no evil. All that exists is zero and infinity, and infinite nullity. He's gaining new senses. The egg isn't completely separated from the universe now. There's Jacob. There's his dark heart. A bridge, a logical bridge. Oh, dark heart, dark heart. How far can it go? What can he change? Jacob, the cops, and the paranormal investigators, on an intentional off-chance, head to the pub. They sit, they order. They decide to play a game. In the quantum cage, the egg appears on the table. It was always there. It was never there. It would always have never been there. Perception is the key to turning back the key. The configuration allowed a tiny crack. Now we can turn the key back earlier. Doesn't have to wait until the end, as the anomaly had to before. He can outsmart the creation of the cage. He can speed things up enough. The paradox this time will be the knotting of time so thin that causality will be broken. Dark heart, dark heart. He spent so long worrying about the nature of God, worrying about being taken into the Vatican. For what? It is but a speck of dust when reflected against the anomaly. Even if the anomaly was subjected to time, it would outlast it to infinity. A new God is born, and the God is him. The new God is them. So perception changes, causality is altered. The others laugh at the board game and have fun. But there is no board game. Damn, that's funny, Anne says. What's wrong, sweetheart? Jacob asks and knows the answer. I'm seeing through him. She points at Pete. Pete laughs. Seriously? I'm seeing through him? He points at Richard. Look at it. It's as if I'm pointing at myself. Other people in the bar start laughing and pointing at one another. Jacob leans back, takes in the chaos, appreciates it, and knows it for what it is. Countless patterns laid over one another, till the only thing at the other end of the system is apparent noise. The visions and senses of everyone overlap and create positive feedback. The universe can't sustain this feedback. It drains it too much. It puts too much pressure on this specific part of it. The breaking of causality rips a hole in the universe's tissue. And the hole acts like a drain of infinite gravity, sucking everything in like a sock being turned inside out. The universe put the power of -1. Like a slingshot, the universe is sent reeling back and then brought to stability again. There's no pub anymore, no cops, no paranormal. There's no conscience as of yet. The only sentience is not in the universe but over it. The anomaly waits for the moment to strike again. It's trapped in its cage, but its reach is never trapped, was never trapped, won't be trapped. Primordial chaos. Colors alight. The world arises from the dust. The dust coalesces and shines, and the stars are formed. And with them come the seeds of us, of Jacob, of all who hold the anomaly and all who are held by it. Civilization turns anew. New cogs turn and old cogs churn. The world is split. Fire detonates and consumes. The old manor is built again, and the anomaly sets its talons over it. The time to try a new combination has come. The time has always come. The time that will never have been, and that will always be. Oh, I'm not afraid of you, Jacob says. I'm here, protected by the highest being, by the essence of truth, by the holder and creator of this world. We, the anomaly, smile and receive us with open arms. Welcome, we say. Okay, my dear friends, I know it's just Monday and back to work and all that, but you gotta help me out. Hope you're concentrating, because someone has got to tell me what on earth was going on there. Weird as all weirdness can be. Something very interesting about that one. I just couldn't help but read it all to you, but not entirely sure what was going on at the same time. Okay, so hope you enjoyed that one. Thoughts, feelings, anything else you want to say in the comments section below the video, and as usual, I'll do my best to join in the conversation. Back again soon, probably tomorrow evening, getting back onto the regular schedule, and those long new series I've been promising you for ages will be coming up soon as well. Until the next time, my dear friends, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.